Okay, so a couple of weeks ago I put up a video which showed how I go about programming drums in Ultrabeat, and I made a little dubstep drum beat for you guys. I also promised at the end of that video I'd do something on mixing drums, so here we are. What I'm going to do is show you primarily how to mix, or how I go about mixing snares and kicks for a lot more punch. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using Ultrabeat's multi-outputs. If you remember in the last video I recommended that when you choose Ultrabeat from the instruments menu, you choose the multi-output setting. What that does is it allows you to route certain sound, any sound you like in Ultrabeat, to auxiliary channels, so that we can take the kick or the snare, for example, out of the main Ultrabeat channel and put them on to their own separate channels, so we can mix them much more precisely. So as you can see, all you have to do is click this button here by the side of the voice that you want to do, and I've already chosen kick, and I'm putting it out to mono track 17. The reason I'm doing that is because I like to keep my kicks mono if possible. I like to keep them right in the center of the mix. I've also done the same with the snare and the clap that we use. Here's the beat so far. Not much punch, I think you'll agree. So I'm going to open up my mixer by pressing Apple 2, and because we selected the multi-output option on Ultrabeat, there's this little plus button. This is our Ultrabeat channel, by the way. We've got this little plus button. That opens up those auxiliary channels I was talking about. And we have to open up 8 and 9, up to 8 and 9, because, as I say, I put the kick and snares on mono tracks, which only appear at the after the 7th track. So now if I play our beat, you can see that the kick is coming out of this channel and the snare is coming out of this channel, which allows us to mix them independently. It definitely sounds a bit weak. Well, my favourite thing to do with snares is to actually distort them. I like to add a bit of high harmonic distortion, which I find gives that sort of punch and crack that I'm looking for. My favourite to plug in to do that with is Camel Audio's Camel Fat, because it has 4 different distortion settings and they all sound great to my ears. But because I want to keep this neutral, I want to use only Logic plugins. For today we're going to replace that with Logic's Distortion 2. So here's the distortion plugin. I'm going to choose the bitey algorithm because that's what I want. I want bite. Cool. Here's it without, and here's it with. Although that sounds quite a lot louder, you can actually see that on the level meter, it really isn't that much louder. That's why I like to use this distortion. It gives the impression of loudness even when it's not actually making the signal that much louder. So re-enable that. Next I'm going to put on a little bit of EQ and turn the analyzer on. I like to visualize the frequencies as I play with them. Some people like to use only their ears, but that's just preference. First thing I'm going to do is put a low cut on. I like to keep the low frequencies for the bass and kick as much as possible. Keep those open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some really high peaks in. And I'm going to use those peaks, this peak, to find the frequencies that I want to boost and cut. Nice. I'm I'm going to bring the master gain down a little bit. Whenever possible, when I'm mixing, I like to use gain settings to keep the sound the same volume as it was when it was unmixed, when it was dry. That way I can just instantly A/B between the two sounds, and the volume doesn't change too much. I always found that things that are loud sound better, so I want to eliminate that from when I'm deciding whether I've made the sound better or not. Finally, I'm just going to add a little bit of compression, and the main thing I'm going to be doing is compressing to leave the attack in there so that this attack's got more snap. Cool. Again, I'll A/B all three of those. So here's without anything. Cool, I think that's got a fair bit more punch. The final thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of reverb. I've already set a reverb up on bus 1. I like to do as much of my reverb with sends as possible, rather than putting it on the channel. And I've put on the drum plate preset, but again, it's your responsibility to choose the right presets for your tune and that give the right texture to your snare. So I'm just going to slowly bring up that reverb send. I want the reverb tail to be barely audible. I want it to just add a little space to the sound. What I'm going to do with the kick first, I think, is probably I'm just going to use a little bit of compression and a little bit of EQ for the sake of simplicity. There's lots you can do to kicks, same with snares, but for now let's just do the basics. I'm going to bring the release down to a short release, and that should emphasize the decay of the attack, the decay of the sound rather, give it more beef at the tail end. Cool. And some EQ. When I'm EQing kicks, I usually want to EQ two things. First, the click, the sort of high-end energy as the beater hits the kick, and also a bit of the meat, a bit of the beef at the bottom end. So here I'm looking for the click. And now for a bit of the beef. Cool. Again, I'll A/B it without and with what we've just done. Cool. I'm always A/Bing stuff because I'm always wary that I can spend ages making a sound or fiddling with something and then only to take the plugins off and realize it sounded better as it was before. So I'm always doing that as much as possible. Let's see how the kick and snare now sit in the main beat. This is with our plugins. and this is without. Not a huge difference. I don't like to go overboard when I'm mixing drums. If I'm not getting the right sound, the sound that I like, I change the sample. I prefer to change things at the source rather than use too much compression and EQ and other plugins. That's just my personal preference, but other people may feel differently. I hope this has been useful for you guys, and I hope I haven't gone over the 10 minutes that YouTube stipulates. Hopefully I'll see you again soon, guys. Cheers for all the kind comments. It's really, really nice. Bye then.